Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Srimad Bhagavad-gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Chapter 3, Text 2. Yamishreneva vakyena buddhing moha yasiva me tadekam vada nischitya yena shreyo ham apnuyam. Arjuna says to Krishna, my intelligence is bewildered by your equivocal instructions, therefore please tell me decisively which will be most beneficial for me. Purport. You have a translation? Any translation? In the previous chapter, as a prelude to the Bhagavad-gita, many different paths were explained, such as Sankhya Yoga, Buddhi Yoga, control of the senses by intelligence, work without fruitive desire, and the position of the neophyte. This was all presented unsystematically. A more organized outline of the path would be necessary for action and understanding. Arjuna therefore wanted to clear up these apparently confusing matters so that any common man could accept them without misinterpretation. Although Krishna had no intention of confusing Arjuna by any jugglery of words, Arjuna could not follow the process of Krishna consciousness either by inertia or by active service. In other words, by his questions, he is clearing the path of Krishna consciousness for all students who seriously want to understand the mystery of Bhagavad-gita. My intelligence is bewildered by your equivocal instructions. Equivocal means ambiguous. It's not clear. So it's very difficult to follow an instruction that's not clear. You become afraid. Well, am I doing it right or I'm not doing it right? Krishna, Prabhupada says he didn't deliberately confuse Arjuna, but Arjuna didn't understand what Krishna was saying. He considered that Krishna was speaking in not a very clear manner. Arjuna just wanted a clear path. From what I can see, Arjuna, he didn't ask Krishna to give him so much philosophical instruction. He just said, I don't know what to do. Should I fight or not fight? You just tell me. He just wanted Krishna, you tell me. If you tell me to fight or tell me not to fight. But Krishna, he started explaining all this philosophy so that Arjuna could understand why he should do what he should do and the implications of him doing what he was doing, or the implications of not doing, the implications of fighting and the implications of not fighting. But Arjuna says that it's not, what you're saying is not very clear. Now, many things in Bhagavad-gita might not seem very clear. It's not so simple. We say that Krishna consciousness is simple. And actually, it is simple. The basic principles are very simple. We are controlled, we are eternal, we are part and parcel of Krishna. We have to serve Krishna. But then, Krishna is not such a simple person. Krishna is crooked. You know that? He is a threefold bending form. If you see the he's leaning on this stick. It's not a straight stick, is it? He's ahariva gateya premna. It's also stated that the way of love of Krishna is not very straightforward. When the gopis are arguing with Krishna, it might seem that they don't like each other, but actually they do love each other very much, but it's not very straight, it's very straightforward. And life itself is very complex, as Arjuna had understood. That whatever I do, it doesn't seem very good. If I fight, then I have to kill or attempt to kill my gurus. That's not good. And if I don't fight, then these wicked people will continue in their ways. Therefore it's my duty to fight. But I'm in a situation where I'm stuck. Whatever I do, damned if you do, damned if you don't. The saying goes. In other words, whatever you do, you're going to be wrong. So Arjuna wanted a process, some simple path out of this. And the simple path actually is to act for the pleasure of Krishna. But to understand that in detail, it may not be very easy. Lord Krishna himself, he started speaking about the nature of action, karma. Because Arjuna was about to act by fighting, but he wanted to renounce the fight, which means that he wanted to come to the platform of inaction, or akarma. And then Lord Krishna explained that kim karma kim akarmeti kaviopi atra mohitaha. What is action and what is inaction? Even very learned people are often bewildered about this. What is that? Then just after that he said, I marked the page because I thought karmanya karma yah pashed karmani cha karmaya sabuddhiman manusheshu sayukta kritsna karma krit. Lord Krishna said, one who sees action in inaction and inaction in action is intelligent among men, and he is properly situated even though he performs action. Which it sounds just bewildering to see action in inaction, inaction in action. Doesn't seem to make any sense. It sounds like one of these Zen Buddhist koans. It's called a koan, which means, so it just doesn't seem to make any sense. The most famous one is the sound of, you should meditate on the sound of one hand clapping. How can you meditate on the sound of one hand clapping? Because it requires two hands to clap. So it sounds like something, it doesn't seem to make any sense. How can you see action in inaction? Because inaction means there is no action. So how can you see action in it? And how can you see inaction in action? Because it's action means there is not inaction. So how can you see inaction in action? So Krishna explains these things. But it seems very contradictory and confusing. And there may be many statements in Bhagavad-gita like that. But actually Krishna is guiding us to see everything very clearly. It's just that, life is complex. So to see our way through all of this may not be very easy. We have, in Bhagavad-gita also, Lord Krishna says, it seems to be right in the same verse, a blatant contradiction. Samoham sarva bhuteshu name dveshosti na priyaha. He begins the verse. That I am equal to all. I don't envy anyone. I don't favor anyone. Ye bhajanti, then Lord Krishna continues, Ye bhajanti cha mang bhaktya maite teshu chapyaham. But one who is my devotee and worships me, I am in him and he is in me. So he says, I'm equal to everyone, but then he immediately makes a distinction right after that. But who is my devotee? Well, I love them in particular. So he said, no one's dear to me, but my devotee is dear to me. And I don't favor anyone, but I favor my devotee. So it seems to be a blatant contradiction. And I've discussed this in detail in a previous lecture, this particular one. But even before Krishna started that contradiction, in the second part of the verse, there already seems to be a contradiction even in the first line, that Samoham sarva bhuteshu name dveshosti na priya. I don't love anyone, I don't hate anyone, I'm equal to all. But right before that, Lord Krishna says, maybe the best known verse in Bhagavad-gita, or second best after the one before it, Paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya cha dushkritam. I come to uplift and deliver the sadhus and to destroy the dushkritis, the rascals. What are you, Krishnandi? Are you sadhu? Krishna's going to save you, or Krishna's going to kill you? Not sure. Doesn't understand the question. Is it? Alright. You better take shelter of your mother. She'll look after you because she's a devotee. So it seems to be a contradiction. So this is discussed in some detail in the 7th canto of Bhagavatam, where Parikshit Maharaj expresses that, well, Krishna is supposed to be equal to everyone, but then why did he, for instance, kill Shishupal? Where's his sameness? So everything that's explained there. Everything that Supreme Lord does is good for everyone, but what is necessary for one person may not be for another. That what is good for one, Krishna wants the good of everyone, but what is good for one person is not necessarily for the other. For Shishupal, Krishna showed his love toward him by cutting off his head. It doesn't seem to be a very loving thing to do, but that was actually for Shishupal's benefit. And as a result, he attained a liberation in devotional service. So that is explained in some detail, but it does require a devotional attitude to understand these points, because it's very easy to just immediately dismiss Krishna and say, you see, as so many people do, they say, you see, he's a liar, he's a cheat, he's a thief, he's a politician. That's an insult. Generally, it's an insult to call someone a politician. He's immoral. So Krishna can be understood by devotion, and Bhagavad-gita can be understood by devotion, bhakti. Otherwise, it's very difficult, impossible to understand these topics. Bhagavad-gita makes everything clear, but if we don't hear Bhagavad-gita properly, then we may find ourselves in the position Arjuna found himself in the beginning of becoming more confused. Or even worse than finding ourselves more confused, what could be worse than that, is to think that we understand when we don't understand. And that's what happens with most people who study Bhagavad-gita, because they don't understand it in the way that Arjuna understood it. They don't hear it in the mood of a devotee, or they don't hear it in the parampara of devotees. So they become more confused. And when Krishna says aham, so many times he says aham, or mam Mataha parataram nanyat. What is that? Mataha parataram nanyat kinchid asti dhananjaya. He says, there's no truth superior to me, even slightly. And people think, well, he's talking about me. When Krishna says me, he means me, the hearer, not Krishna himself. When Krishna says, I am the purpose of the Vedas, Vedaisha sarvera hameva vedyaha, and they say, well, in the Vedas, the Supreme is described as arupa, anama, nirguna, no form, no name, no qualities. So Krishna must have no form, name or qualities, because he's the goal of the Vedas, and the Vedas say that the truth, that the ultimate principle has no name, form or qualities. So this appears to be contradictory, that a person whose form is there, Shyamasundar, whose name is there, Shyamasundar, Krishna, whose qualities are there. Some people say they're good, some say they're bad, but they're definitely qualities. So if he's the Supreme Truth, and the Supreme Truth is described in the Vedas as having no form, name or qualities, then we can either understand that Krishna's apparent name, form and qualities are not real, they're just a temporary manifestation of in this unreal world, as the Mayavadis say, and that's why they're called Mayavadis, because they think that Krishna's name, form, qualities, it's all Maya, because ultimately Krishna is Nirguna, Anama, Arupa. Or we can take it the other way, that Krishna definitely has form, name and qualities, and therefore when the Shastra says that the Supreme has no form, name or qualities, it means he has no material form, name or qualities, which is the correct understanding, if we analyze in detail. Of course, most people are not interested in analyzing in detail. Most people take it in a very shallow way. So there are apparent contradictions within Shastra, within the Bhagavad-gita. But the contradiction is only because of our lack of understanding. And therefore, we have to understand. Bhagavad-gita is spoken so that we can understand. And Arjuna understood it. He didn't remain confused. Krishna explained these points so that Arjuna could become free from confusion. So we should also hear Bhagavad-gita so that we can be free from confusion. There's the recorder. That's why I wasn't in the room. I was confused. We can be. We should hear these points and try to understand them very deeply. That's why I was asked to discuss Srimad Bhagavatam, give a class on Srimad Bhagavatam. But these days I'm getting more and more into Bhagavad-gita, because I'm finding that even in the basic points, Bhagavad-gita is the basic understanding on which our understanding of Krishna can develop more and more. But even these basic points, they're so profound, because Krishna, he's not an ordinary person, so even what we might call the ordinary or basic points about Krishna, they're very deep. We can go on trying to understand more and more about Krishna. His glories are unlimited. So Krishna, he distinguishes, even though he says that I'm equal to all, but he distinguishes between the sadhus and the dushkritis, the good people and the bad people. And it's not just a matter of calling someone good and calling someone bad, but there's a very distinct difference in the way Krishna behaves towards them. Toward the sadhus, Krishna will give his life for the sadhus. He is, although Krishna never dies, but Krishna says that sadhavo hridayo mahyam sadhunang hridayang tvaham adanyate na jananti nahang tebhyo managapi. Krishna says, the sadhus, they are my heart, and I am the heart of the sadhus. They know nothing but me, I know nothing but them. It's a very intimate relationship with his devotees. And as for the demons, vinash, like the dushkriti, Krishna destroys them. So, there's a distinct difference. And we should know that. Though in one sense, all jivas are one or of the same quality. Mamai vangsho jiva loke jiva bhuta sanatanaha. All are parts and parcels of Krishna. But there is a distinct difference in the way different people behave and what their attitudes are. And Krishna responds differently and they get a different result. We find in the Bhagavad-gita, Lord Krishna discusses the dushkritis or the asuras in some detail. He says the basic definition of a dushkriti or a rascal, is the simple English translation, is that they don't surrender to Krishna. Right? Which verse is that? Namang dushkritino murha prapadyante naradhamaha maya pahrita jnana asurang bhavamashritaha. Krishna classifies 4 kinds of demons: the fools, the rascals, the bewildered scholars, and the born again or avowed out and out demons. But their basic symptom is that they don't surrender to Krishna. And Krishna devotes most of the 16th chapter of Gita to describing them, their bad qualities. Dambho, darpo, vimanascha, krodha, parusham evacha, ajnana chabhijatasya, partha sampadam asurim. The asuras, or the people who are eligible to be killed by or destroyed by Krishna, they are proud, arrogant, conceited, angry, harsh, ignorant. They're born with these qualities. So, not nice people at all. So Krishna discusses these people in some detail, and he says, I destroy them. But Krishna's destroying, that's also in a sense uplifting, but in a different way. So we need to understand this. Krishna speaks this for us in this world so that we can understand this. Actually, in one sense, the Bhagavad-gita is not spoken for pure devotees. It's spoken for people who are bewildered, like Arjuna. And for those who are pure devotees, they have the vision that Krishna has. Samoham sarva bhuteshu name dvesho stina priyaha. The pure devotees, they don't see anyone as good or bad. Sarva bhuteshu yapashed bhagavad bhagavam atmanaha. What's the next line? Bhagavad bhagavam atmanaha. Third line I can't remember. Bhagavato Tama. Maybe I'll look that up. I should know that. Bhagavad Bhavam. Oops. Alright, I'll just take a little break here. Oh. I'm not finding it. Pashyanti Bhagavad. Esha Bhagavato Tama. Anyway, the purport is that the topmost devotee, he sees all living beings as pure devotees. Ah, yes. Sarvabhuteshu yapashad bhagavad bhavam bhutani bhagavat yatman yesha bhagavato tamaha. The pure devotee sees that all living beings are part and parcel of Krishna. In his vision, he just sees Krishna and everyone else. He doesn't see their good or bad deeds. That's the vision of a pure devotee. And that's when Krishna says, I see all living beings equally, well, that's the completely pure vision. But then a middle level devotee, a preacher, he sees differently. He's enjoying to see differently. Ishvare tad adhineshu balisheshu tvishatsu cha prema maitri kripopeksha yakaroti samadhyamaha. The madhyama adhikari he distinguishes that there is God and he loves God. He distinguishes that there are devotees and he makes friendship with the devotees. He sees that there are people who are not devotees, but they're not out and out demons, they're just foolish and misled, and he's merciful to them. And he sees that there are people who are completely demoniac and he avoids them. Now, if one is going to preach Krishna consciousness, then he has to make distinctions. In Bhagavad-gita, Lord Krishna makes distinctions. There are good people and there are bad people, and we should behave with them differently. So if we have no connection with the world, if we're like Vangshidas Babaji, for instance, then, well, even he distinguished, but mostly he didn't interact with the outside world. He was just absorbed in his own ecstasy with Gopal, his deity. And then sometimes when he would come to external consciousness or semi-external consciousness, he would make some distinctions. So pure devotee is just absorbed, he sees Krishna, he can, in that ecstasy, he cannot even imagine that anyone could have any bad feeling toward Krishna or toward anyone else. His heart is so pure, he cannot even imagine that there could be such a thing as bad feeling. Even if someone is spitting on him, beating him, he's just oblivious to it all. He's not cognizant of it. There's so much absorbed in Krishna consciousness. But for being kind to the living beings, one has to make distinctions. So Krishna, he also, in one sense he's equal to all, but in another sense he makes distinctions also, because you can't uplift someone if you don't think they need uplifting. And then you have to make some distinction if we're going to preach Krishna consciousness, if we're going to help others. Now it's said that a Vaishnava, one of the important qualities of a Vaishnava is that he doesn't criticize anyone. But on the other hand, if we don't criticize anyone, then we can't point out what is incorrect behavior and rectify others. So actually it's true, the topmost devotee doesn't criticize others, and a Madhyamadhikari preacher, actually Prabhupada often said that the preacher is the topmost devotee. But he takes a lower position. But out of his kindness, he tries to uplift others. So, the Madhyama Adhikari, he doesn't criticize as others criticize. Materialistic people criticize others because they take pleasure in pointing out the faults of others. By pointing out the faults of others, they like to show that they themselves are better. Out of meanness, to make others feel bad. These are the various reasons why materialistic people criticize others. But a devotee criticizes others not out of such a base motive. He criticizes others to correct them, to point out their faults. Or in many cases, the people who are criticized, they are incorrigible. That means they cannot be reformed. They're just not open to be reformed. But by pointing out their fault, other persons who may be misled by them, they can be saved from, by seeing the fault of persons they would have been misled by, they are saved from that. So, for instance, we might criticize these bogus avatars. In fact, we should do. We don't expect them to. We don't expect Sai Baba to say, "Well, actually, I'm bogus, and now I want to become a Vaishnava and surrender my life to Krishna." We don't expect him to say that, and we don't expect his followers, most of them, to change. I mean, in all these years of my speaking against Sai Babaism, I can hardly think of. Just now I can think of 3 people who came out of that and became devotees, but that's not very many. But it is necessary, nevertheless. You may say, well, why even speak about this? Just to distinguish, and for the sake of those who would otherwise be bewildered, and to establish the actual position of the personality of Godhead. So it's necessary to criticize. In fact, the Madhyama Adhikari, or the preacher, may appear to be the most critical person in the world. Srila Prabhupada, he was always criticizing. And his regular vocabulary included fools, rascals, nonsense, animals, and so on. Because it's necessary for a preacher to do so. Unless he does so, then we'll just go along with the general social convention in which, what is that? Hum bhi chup, tum bhi chup. I don't say anything, you don't say anything, and we just go on. And you do anything you like, and I'll do anything I like, and you don't criticize, I don't criticize. This is a social convention, and by which the people, they're very polite, and they just get on with their business of being rascals often a very what appears to be an inoffensive manner, but actually they're offensive to Krishna. So there is a difference between sadhus and rascals. In one sense there's no difference, inasmuch as everyone is by nature a servant of Krishna. But there is a difference inasmuch as some recognize that and act according to that, and such people are called sadhus. And others, they refuse to recognize that, and they're called rascals. Now, in the context of modern India, we might think that, well, Krishna comes to uplift the sadhus, so there are so many sadhus. You can go on the Haridwar, you'll find so many sadhus. Go to Vrindavan, we'll find so many sadhus. Along the banks of any holy river in India, we'll find so many ashrams and so many sadhus. And there are so many there are individual sadhus who have their own ashrams, and then you find some sadhus with 3 or 4 ashrams, and you'll find big organizations like Brahma Kumaris and all this sadhus. There are so many sadhus. So someone might think that, well, Krishna comes to protect the sadhus and he's going to kill the rascals. Maybe he's going to come and kill all the Muslims, we might think. But Krishna doesn't make any sectarian claim. He gives the qualities of the sadhus. That's very specific in the Bhagavatam, that verse I just quoted, that sadhus are devotees. And the non-devotees are those, or the demons, are those who are proud, arrogant, ignorant, all those bad qualities that are mentioned there. And Krishna elaborates in the 16th chapter of Bhagavad-gita, giving more bad qualities of the demons, such as, for instance, asatyam apratishtam te jagadahuranishvaram aparaspara sambhutam kimanyat kama haitukam. The demons, they say there is no ultimate principle in the universe. There's no controller. Everything is just going on just like that. What other cause is there but desire? So, generally we consider a sadhu to be Someone with a beard and a turban and a name something like Omkareshvara Ananda, something like that. Brahmalin. And usually they should have be fat also. That's usually considered the symptom of a sadhu. Either they should be fat or very, very skinny, extremely skinny. One of the two. Nothing in between. If you're going to be a real sadhu. And the long beard, yeah, that's important too. So, who is a sadhu? Now, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, Mayavadi Krishna Aparadi. The Mayavadis are offenders to Krishna. Because they say he has no name, form, qualities, pastimes. They may say, well, that's what the Shastra says. But to take this as an absolute principle, that Krishna has no name, form, qualities, pastimes, it's very offensive to Krishna. Now, not long ago, when I was last in Udupi, that was 3 months ago, a devotee asked me about Mayavadi. Yeah, what did he say? I wrote it down, that's why I remember that. Yeah, he commented to me that many who we call Mayavadis, they're actually very serious sadhakas. They rise early, you'll see, they rise, they'll take bath in the Ganga or Narmada or whatever river they're living on. Early in the morning they'll chant Vedic stotras. If you meet them, they're often very well behaved and polite. And in all sense, they're very serious sadhakas. I agreed, but I said that they're serious about the wrong thing. Or you could say they're serious about the right thing, but in the wrong way. They're serious about spiritual life, but their perspective is so wrong. It's just like Hitler is the most popular demon of the 20th century, at least in the Western world. Well, it seems in India people didn't have such a bad opinion of Hitler as the British did. But anyway, the British won the war, so Hitler got consigned to the dustbin of his, he got thrown into he's made out to be the worst person, although I don't know if George Bush, for instance, is any better. Actually, I often say that Hitler was better because at least he was honest about being a rascal, but the modern demons, they in the name of humanitarianism and all these things, they do the same thing. Peace, justice, humanitarian, democracy. They go into other countries and take them over and kill the people and like that. Anyway, the point is that the gross examples make the point clear. It's a common technique in explaining, in arguing any subject. That's always done. In arguing against Mayavad, you'll find if their point is taken to an extreme, then you can see how wrong the argument is. So if you're wrong about something, even if you're very serious about it, it's still wrong. So Hitler, he was very serious. There's no doubt he was very serious. He was very committed to the uplift of Germany. He was very committed to what he believed was right, but he was a demon. So, and the result was bad for him and bad for everyone else. No one benefited from Hitler's activities apart from the people who are funding the war, both sides, whose families are still funding all the wars today, which is another subject. And even they didn't benefit, of course, because they all go to hell anyway. But, in many ways they're doing the right thing, these sadhus, but because underlying it, even though they don't recognize it themselves, they have an underlying dvesha toward Krishna, an underlying sense of they don't want to accept that Krishna is supreme and we have to surrender to him. They don't want to accept that, which is why they fall in the category of Bhagavad-gita, that the basic definition of a dushkriti or a rascal is someone who is not inclined to surrender to Krishna, who's against the principle of surrender, who either avoids it or is directly against the principle of surrendering to Krishna. And even though the Mayavadis may talk of that, and they'll quote Bhagavad-gita, Mam ekam sharanam vraja, but they interpret it in such a way as to that surrender to Krishna becomes something completely different, and they avoid surrendering to Krishna. So are they sadhus? Well, in one sense you can say they are, and in many ways the Mayavadis are often better sadhus than our devotees, especially our ISKCON devotees, because in many ways we are adjusted to the modern world. At least in terms of external performances, and we'll find many good sadhus, and in many ways we appreciate that also. But in another sense, no, they're not sadhus. They're rascals and very fallen. So this may seem to be contradictory. Arjuna's problem was he thought that what Krishna said was contradictory. It's not contradictory, but we have to find the samanvay, the harmony. It's seen from different perspectives. From the absolute perspective, the Mayavadis are rascals. But if we come down a bit, and we can see that, well, in some ways they're doing some good things. Their inclination to, for instance, live on the bank of the Ganga, their inclination to want to be good, in some ways it's good. They protect or observe Hindu culture, and so in some ways it's good. But the mistake they make is so bad that it really spoils everything. So in some ways, yes, very good. These people are very good. But in other ways, no. And the other ways are so bad that we don't want to associate with them very thickly. We have no business to visit their ashram, but we might do, for instance, for selling them books, we might lodge if we're going to Rameshwaram or something like that. When I went to Rameshwaram, I lodged in a Mayavadi ashram, and I was respectful to the Mahant, and he already had our books, and they appreciate ISKCON's work in many ways. On one level, they're sadhus, and we should respect them as such. But in another sense, we're very much against their understanding and what they teach. But then in another way, even though we be so much against, or we should be so much against, for instance, these cheaters, we directly call them cheaters, and sometimes people become shocked. These bogus sadhus. But in another sense, they may be even better than those who are talking about God, but misrepresenting in such a bad way that just like there are so many Christians converting left, right and center in India, and then the people they convert, they stop believing in many gods and they start believing in one God, which is the point we're trying to bring them to. But on the other hand, they become completely inimical toward Vedic culture. And they become blasphemous. And they become to the strange position where they profess to believe in God, but they hate Krishna. And isn't that ridiculous? They don't know who he is, actually. So, these points may appear to be very complex. Therefore, they all need to be discussed in some detail so we can understand them properly. Therefore, I'm discussing Bhagavad-gita, because it may seem that we've understood it and we can go on. And to some extent we should have understood Bhagavad-gita, and we should go on. It's not that we should avoid reading Srimad Bhagavatam, and Srimad Bhagavatam will definitely increase our understanding of and knowledge of, and therefore of Krishna, and therefore our attraction to him. But then if we go back to Bhagavad-gita, we may find, there's so much there I have to investigate and understand. All right, I've finished it. We could go on and on and on and on, but I think that's all I'll discuss at this point, unless either of the 3 or 4 among us who can understand what I'm saying have any questions or comments. And sorry, but I just thought I'd say that for all these things, just to catch it while it was there, because there may be other people around the world who will eventually get to hear all this, even though I just came to Kuwait for 2 days. So you can give a summary in Hindi, unless you have any question or anything.
Should I then give summary and maybe they'll have some questions? Because most of them will not have.
Okay, yeah.
तो महाराज ने आज की जो क्लास थी वो इस बात से शुरू करी कि हम लोग कई बातें जो श्रील प्रभुपाद से सुनते हैं वो हमारे को भगवान कृष्ण ने आज के श्लोक में कहा कि वो जो भी बातें बोलते हैं वो एक समान रहती हैं, उसमें कोई भेदभाव नहीं करते भगवान कृष्ण। पर हम लोग जब श्रील प्रभुपाद की पुस्तकें पढ़ते हैं, भगवद गीता पढ़ते हैं, तो वहां पे हम पाते हैं कि कई चीजें भगवान कृष्ण ऐसे बोलते हैं जो एक दूसरे के साथ में नहीं सम्मिलित हो पाती। तो शुरुआत ऐसे हुई कि अर्जुन जो थे, भगवान कृष्ण अर्जुन को और ज्यादा भ्रमित नहीं करना चाहते थे, और अर्जुन तो भगवान कृष्ण से एक सीधा उत्तर चाहते थे कि मैं क्या करूं। पर तब भी भगवान कृष्ण ने उनको पूरा भगवद गीता का ज्ञान दिया, अच्छे से पूरा सब कुछ समझाया। महाराज ने कहा वैसे तो ये कृष्ण भक्ति है, साधारण तरह से जो साधारण व्यक्ति है, एक सरल दिल के लोग हैं, उनके लिए बहुत आसान है। और जो साधारण प्रिंसिपल है, साधारण तत्व है, कैसे हम आपकी भक्ति करते, वो चीज आसान है। पर काफी सारी चीजें जब हम डीप में जाएंगे और गंभीर उसमें जाएंगे तो हम पाएंगे कि काफी चीजें जो है मुश्किल हो जाती है समझना। जैसे भगवान कृष्ण का रूप है, भगवान कृष्ण का रूप भी स्वयं रूप से त्रिभंगा रूप है, तो सीधा नहीं है, त्रिभंगा है। भगवान कृष्ण का रूप और भगवान कृष्ण का जो प्रेम है गोपियों के बीच में, भगवान कृष्ण के बीच में, वो भी सीधा नहीं है। महाराज ने समझाया उसके अंदर भी कई ऐसी चीजें हैं जो हमारे को लगेगा कि प्रेम है या नहीं, और हमारे को समझना मुश्किल। तो महाराज ने ये एग्जाम्पल देने पर कहा, उदाहरण देने के बाद, कि हम हर एक व्यक्ति का जो जीवन है वो बहुत किसी का भी जीवन सीधा नहीं है। हर एक के जीवन परेशानियां, हर एक के जीवन कठिनाइयां जो हमारे समझने में मुश्किल होती है। अब जैसे अर्जुन जी के जीवन में क्या परेशानी थी कि वो लड़ाई करें नहीं करें, अपने संबंधियों को मारे कि नहीं मारे। तो अर्जुन जी ने प्रश्न पूछा, तो भगवान कृष्ण ने समझाना शुरू करा कि कर्मयोग क्या है। उन्होंने कहा कि कार्य करने का की परिभाषा है, ना कार्य करने की क्या परिभाषा, कर्म की क्या परिभाषा, कर्म की क्या, अभिकर्म की क्या परिभाषा। फिर एक श्लोक आता है उसके अंदर कि जो लोग कार्य के अंदर निष्कार्य को देखते हैं और निष्कार्य के अंदर कार्य को देखते हैं वो सबसे बड़े ज्ञानी है। आप लोगों ने सब श्लोक सुना होगा। तो ये जो है चीज हमारे को साधारण व्यक्ति को समझ में नहीं आएगी, पर महाराज ने समझाया कि जब हम लोग भगवद गीता का प्रयास करते हैं तो ये चीजें भगवान कृष्ण हमारे को धीरे धीरे समझाना शुरू करते हैं। जैसे एक और चीज भगवद गीता के अंदर कहा गई, पहले भगवान कहते हैं कि वो सब जीवात्माओं के लिए एक समान है, और फिर उसी श्लोक में बोलते हैं कि नहीं, अपने भक्तों के लिए मैं उनको ज्यादा उनको प्रेम करता हूं। फिर उसके बाद पहले एक और श्लोक था, इसी श्लोक के पहले महाराज का, जहां पे ऐसी एक दुविधा वाली बात आती है। भगवान कहते हैं, यहाँ पे बोलते हैं कि सबके लिए समान हो, उसके पहले बोलते हैं कि मेरा अवतार होता है जो असुर है उनका विनाश करने के लिए, और जो भक्त है उनका देखभाल करने के लिए। तो महाराज ने कहा ये चीज हम कैसे समझेंगे, इसको समझने में मुश्किल। तो एक जैसे श्रीमद् भागवतम में से एक उदाहरण दिया महाराज ने कि शिशुपाल को क्यों मारा और कैसे मारा। तो शिशुपाल को भगवान कृष्ण ने मारा था, कैसे, अपने चक्र से मार दिया था। तो भागवतम हमारे को समझाती है इन चीजों को कैसे समझना चाहिए। भागवतम ने समझाया कि भगवान कृष्ण ने शिशुपाल का उद्धार, उसको मोक्ष, उसका वध करते किया। तो भगवान के कार्य को समझने के लिए जो भगवान के दिव्य कार्य हैं, वो समझने के लिए हमारे को भक्तिमय हृदय से भगवान की कथा को सुनना होगा। अगर हम भक्ति के मय हृदय से भगवान की कथा को सुनेंगे तो ये चीज फिर हमारे को समझ में आ जाएगी। भगवान के जो कार्य हमारे को भी द्विधा में लग रहे हैं कि हमारे को समझ में नहीं आ रहा, वो फिर हमारे को धीरे धीरे समझ में आने लगेगा। तो जिन लोगों को समझ में नहीं आता है वो ज्यादातर भगवान कृष्ण के बारे में सोचते हैं भगवान कृष्ण तो भाई उनका चरित्र अच्छा नहीं था, झूठ बोलते थे, लड़ाई कराते थे, सब, क्योंकि वह लोग समझ नहीं पा रहे भगवान कृष्ण के चरित्र को। पर जब तक हमारे अंदर भक्ति नहीं रहेगी तब तक भगवद गीता, श्रीमद् भागवतम, भगवान कृष्ण का चरित्र सुनिए आप लोग। भगवान कृष्ण का चरित्र समझना बहुत मुश्किल है जब तक भगवान के हृदय में भक्ति नहीं रहेगी। अब महाराज ने समझाया कि और कई लोग होते हैं जो अर्जुन के जैसे हैं, जो मानते हैं कि मैं द्विधा में हूं, मेरे को समझ में नहीं आ रहा, भगवान आप मेरी मदद करिए। पर महाराज ने कहा उससे भी बुरे लोग वो हैं जो वैसे तो अंधकार में हैं, जिनको ज्ञान नहीं है, पर सोचते हैं कि हमको सब कुछ समझ में आ रहा है, कि हमको भगवद गीता अच्छे समझ में आ रही है, और उसका सब अंशत तात्पर्य बताना शुरू करते हैं। जैसे उन लोग ज्यादातर कब परेशानी में आ जाते हैं, जैसे भगवान कृष्ण ने श्लोक के अंदर कहा कि मेरे को आप वेदों से समझ सकते हैं, और वेदों के अंदर भगवान कृष्ण के बारे में क्या कि भगवान के कृष्ण की भगवान के कोई गुण नहीं है, भगवान का कोई रूप नहीं है। तो ऐसे व्यक्ति जिनको भक्ति नहीं है वो जब ऐसी चीजें सुनते हैं तो वो सीधा बोलते हैं कि इसका मतलब शायद भगवान कृष्ण जो है वो भी एक माया के प्रभाव में आके एक रूप है, और जो माया जब उनका अंत होगा तो वो अंत हो जाएगा। ये गलत सोच है। और दूसरी एक तरह की सोच है कि भगवान कृष्ण का कोई भौतिक रूप नहीं है और भगवान कृष्ण के जो गुण है वो भौतिक नहीं है। तो अगर हम भगवान कृष्ण के मार्गदर्शन के अनुसार चलेंगे तो जिस प्रकार
I just going to make another point. The question of this devotee in Udupi, but he was saying about the Mayavadis. I said no, they're on the wrong path, but then he asked, is it their fault that they don't know the real path? Ultimately, yes, it is, because they're attracted to the wrong thing, and if we tell them the right thing, there's very few who will come out of that. So, yeah, that people are attracted to that means there's something wrong in their consciousness. They have a sense of irsha or hatred toward Krishna. So there is some, despite their good behavior and their culture and this and that. Actually, not all Mayavadis are well behaved, some of them, but there's an underlying sense of rejection of Krishna, which is very bad. Or we could take it another way and say, well, it's our fault that we didn't preach enough. That we can also take it like that. But we have to be very clear about these points, otherwise we tend to become Mayavadis ourselves and start to think, well, what he's doing is good. Well, in one sense it's good, but we should keep everything in perspective, because if we start to think it's good without seeing the bad side of it, then we may partake in that bad side. If we start to approve of their outlook about Krishna, then we also become offensive. So we have to be very careful. Therefore, we enjoin not to mix with such people. On the other hand, if we're against them and we don't recognize that after all there's some culture there, then we may go to another extreme. Okay, that was the little extra. Then, question. क्या प्रश्न है किसका?
महाराज, अभी हम लोग तो बहुत ही यानी मेरे को देख करके बोलता हूँ कि मेरा जो बुद्धि है उतना कोई ज्यादा नहीं है, लेकिन इतना हमको पता चला कि भगवान कौन है और मैं कौन है और मेरा क्या कर्तव्य है.
Yeah.
तो अभी मेरे को इतना शास्त्र है, जितना भी शास्त्र में लिखा हुआ है, इतना ज्ञान है जो मेरे विचार से वो उतना डीपली जाना मुश्किल है। और ऐसे भी सारे मतलब उसमें डिटेल्स है जो कि हम समझ नहीं पाएंगे।
ऑलराइट, सो ठीक है,
लेकिन मैंने शास्त्रों के अनुसार चल के ऐसे सेवा करेंगे और आखिर में मेरा मौत हो जाएगा। तो
ठीक है, तो आप जो बोल रहे हैं मैं अंग्रेजी में कहूँगा, and then you can put it back.
Sure.
So the proposal is that, well, I'm not so intelligent, I don't go so deeply into Shastra, but I know from Shastra who Krishna is, and I have faith in serving him, and is that all right? Is that enough? And actually, for most people, yes, it is. And maybe it's easier also that for many people, if they start thinking about these things, they may become even more confused. They keep it simple. On the other hand, it is required that some devotees at least get into these points, because otherwise what happens is, just like for instance, many years ago during the time of Vedanta Deshika, who was a great devotee in the Ramanuja Sampradaya, he was residing in Sri Rangam and he was studying the Vedas and making commentaries, and the local devotees there who they were just reciting the Tamil Divya Prabandhams, which are just glorifying Krishna with Bhakti, and they thought, what is this? He's studying Veda and all this. This is just he's a dry Gyani, and they more or less drove him out of Sri Rangam. What is this useless fellow? He's got no bhakti. He's just all theoretical, and we're direct. We just want to glorify the Lord. We don't want to hear all these theoretical talks. So he went to Kanchi, I believe. Yeah, and that's Kanchi. That's the north of. That's the Varigalai, the northern path. And sometime after that, one of the Shankaracharyas, or a follower of Shankara, the Advaitavad, came, and he saw in Sri Rangam no one knows Sanskrit properly. No one can discuss any philosophy, and he mocked them all. You see, they don't know anything. They're just a bunch of sentimentalists, and then whatever they wanted to say to uphold their position, he smashed it, because he was deeply learned in Advaita philosophy. Then after, they were so humiliated and embarrassed that they called Vedanta, the devotees there in Sri Rangam, they called Vedanta Deshika back. So it's required that at least some people understand this, to deal, as Srila Prabhupada says, he talks about, if you read the Srimad Bhagavatam, at least you can defend yourself against the onslaught of atheists. But what often happens is that when devotees are very simple, they can easily get misled also. And there are many cases. We find in Chaitanya Charitamrita that Balabhadra Bhattacharya, who was Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's assistant, and he was supposed to be, he was. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said that you're a Pandit. He'd studied Shastra. But when the local people said that Krishna has appeared again in Vrindavan, and at night he's dancing on Kaliya in the Yamuna, Balabhadra Bhattacharya became very enthusiastic to go and see that. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, what is this now? You're supposed to be a Pandit and you believe all this rubbish? So he was learned, but he hadn't considered the implications of Shastra. Sometimes you find people, they're learned, but they don't know how to apply it. So unless there are devotees who understand all these points in detail, then these simple devotees who just want to do service, they're going to be misled by cheaters and mayavadis and bogus gurus. And practically what's going on in India, mostly people are following bhakti. And all these groups, like I'm talking about these bogus avatars and bogus gurus, they are some people, like mundane scholars, they classify them in the bhakti cults, because it's guru bhakti. People have bhakti for Sai Baba and Asharam Baba and all this, but that's not bhakti according to the definition of Shastra. But the spirit of devotion is there, but it's perverted because it's centered on the wrong person, and there are so many wrong ideas that people have. Just like Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he was fighting against all these sahajiyas. There's so much bhakti in Bengal, but there are so many, it's all mixed up with so many bogus ideas. So someone should understand these points about the philosophy in detail, because that's required. Another point is that is also glorification of Krishna to do that, because what Krishna speaks is non-different from him. And to attempt to go deeper and deeper in understanding Krishna, that's another form of glorification of Bhagavad-gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, and therefore all our acharyas have done that. And sometimes some class of sahajiyas, they criticize the acharyas as being dry gyanis. So it's not that everyone's going to be a great philosopher, but that is also required, and that's why Prabhupada had classes every day, and maybe not everyone's fit for hearing classes. Some people should be or they may not be fit for hearing classes at a philosophical level, but Prabhupada spoke every single day on the philosophy of Krishna consciousness. And I've several times described how the first time I had direct darshan of Prabhupada, he came to London for less than one day, and the only speaking he did, he gave one class. He didn't say to the devotees, "I'm very happy to see you," or any such thing. He just came down, gave a class, a very philosophical class, and left. That was my first darshan of Prabhupada. So he gave these classes day after day because he wanted to train first and foremost a class of brahmanas, people who understand the truth and how to apply it in their lives. So maybe one reason in ISKCON that nowadays a lot of our classes, there's lots of jokes and stories and all this kind of things, is because, they're trying to bring in people other than the philosophically minded class. Or people who, that's there. I mean, in the Puranas are stories, and that's Mahabharat, Sri Shudra Drija Bandhu Nam, Trayana Veda Gochara. That Mahabharata is meant for people who are not fit for the high teachings of the Vedas. But so maybe there should be a division of class, of instruction also. That's also there. Brahmanas are not instructed in the same way as non-Brahmanas. But even though as Srila Prabhupada said, even though the philosophy course, you'll hardly expect 2 or 3 people to enroll for that, but still it should be maintained. Massive people, they're not going to be philosophers. But to some extent they should be also. They should understand the basics as far as possible. Yeah, it's true. All these points discussing in detail, maybe it's not for everyone. For most people, chant Hare Krishna, take prasad and be happy. But at least try to understand Bhagavad-gita at some level. Yeah.
Yes.
You understood? Okay.
Yes.
All right.
I have one more question, please.
Yeah.
After second initiation, is sannyas lena jaruri?
After second initiation, is it necessary to take sannyas? Did you take second initiation? No. Well, I think if you're asking that question, you shouldn't take second initiation because, second initiation, Pancharatrik, means that you're allowed to worship deities. But Prabhupada often called that Brahminical initiation. So to be a Brahmin means one should understand philosophy, and it's not necessary to formally take sannyas. At one level it's not necessary, on another level Prabhupada said everyone should take sannyas. So again, it's an apparent contradiction. I'm personally not much in favor of giving everyone Brahminical initiation anyway, that's another whole subject. Is it necessary to take sannyas? Formally, no, it's not. It's not required. And not advisable, probably, also. Yeah, anything else? There was a question.
I just wanted to ask about, just like we know that devotees, when they are advancing in spiritual life, they feel a reciprocation from the Lord.
Yeah, devotees who are, I'll just repeat what you're saying, because, this should be round this way. Devotees who are advancing in spiritual life, they feel reciprocation from the Lord.
And so it helps them advance more. And
The soul?
And thus it helps them
And the reciprocation from the Lord helps them to advance more. They feel enthused to go on.
But what about in the case of Mayavadis?
What in the case of Mayavadis?
What is making them go on?
What makes them go on? Well, it may be different in different cases. People have different motivations. Sorry, we're talking about Hitler. Maybe his motivation was the sense he's doing good for the German people. That may have been his motivation. For the Mayavadis, they get a huge boost to their egos. Egoism keeps them running on. To think that I am God, and then people come and they respect them, and it's a big thing. Everyone has some motivation. So they get reciprocation from the material energy in thinking that they are God. Makes them feel good in a perverted way. Yeah, anything else? I'm just going to make another point. The question of this devotee in Udupi, but he was saying about the Mayavadis. I said that no, they're on the wrong path, but then he asked, is it their fault that they don't know the real path? Ultimately, yes, it is, because they're attracted to the wrong thing, and if we tell them the right thing, there's very few who will come out of that. So, that people are attracted to that means there's something wrong in their consciousness. They have a sense of irsha or hatred toward Krishna. So there is some, despite their good behavior and their culture and this and that. Actually, not all Mayavadis are well behaved, some of them, but there's an underlying sense of rejection of Krishna, which is very bad. Or we could take it another way and say, well, it's our fault that we didn't preach enough. That we can also take it like that. But we have to be very clear about these points, otherwise we tend to become Mayavadis ourselves and start to think, well, what he's doing is good. Well, in one sense it's good, but we should keep everything in perspective, because if we start to think it's good without seeing the bad side of it, then we may partake in that bad side. If we start to approve of their outlook about Krishna, then we also become offensive. So we have to be very careful. Therefore we enjoin not to mix with such people. On the other hand, if we're against them and we don't recognize that after all there's some culture there, then we may go to another extreme. Okay, that was the little extra. Then, question. क्या प्रश्न है किसका?
महाराज, अभी हम लोग तो बहुत ही हम लोग यानी मेरे को देख करके बोलता हूँ कि मेरा जो बुद्धि है उतना कोई ज्यादा नहीं है, लेकिन इतना हमको पता चला कि भगवान कौन है और मैं कौन है और मेरा क्या कर्तव्य है। तो अभी मैं तो इतना शास्त्र है, जितना भी शास्त्रों में लिखा हुआ है, इतना ज्ञान है जो मेरे विचार से वो उतना डीपली जाना मुश्किल है। और ऐसे भी सारे मतलब उसमें डिटेल्स है जो कि हम समझ नहीं पाएंगे।
Alright, so ठीक है,
लेकिन मैंने शास्त्रों के अनुसार चल के और ऐसे सेवा करेंगे और आखिर में मेरा मौत हो जाएगा। तो
ठीक है, तो आप जो बोल रहे हैं मैं अंग्रेजी में कहूँगा, and then you can put it back.
Sure.
So the proposal is that, well, I'm not so intelligent, I don't go so deeply into Shastra, but I know from Shastra who Krishna is, and I have faith in serving him, and is that all right? Is that enough? And actually, for most people, yes, it is. And maybe it's easier also that for many people, if they start thinking about these things, they may become even more confused. They keep it simple. On the other hand, it is required that some devotees at least get into these points, because otherwise what happens is, just like for instance, many years ago during the time of Vedanta Deshika, who was a great devotee in the Ramanuja Sampradaya, he was residing in Sri Rangam and he was studying the Vedas and making commentaries, and the local devotees there who they were just reciting the Tamil Divya Prabandhams, which are just glorifying Krishna with Bhakti, and they thought, what is this? He's studying Veda and all this. He's a dry Gyani, and they more or less drove him out of Sri Rangam. What is this useless fellow? He's got no bhakti. He's just all theoretical, and we're direct. We just want to glorify the Lord. We don't want to hear all these theoretical talks. So he went to Kanchi, I believe. Yeah, and that's Kanchi. That's the north. That's the Varigalai, the northern path. And sometime after that, one of the Shankaracharyas, or a follower of Shankara, the Advaitavad, came, and he saw in Sri Rangam no one knows Sanskrit properly. No one can discuss any philosophy, and he just he mocked them all. See, they don't know anything. They're just a bunch of sentimentalists, and then whatever they wanted to say to uphold their position, he smashed it, because he was deeply learned in Advaita philosophy. Then after, they were so humiliated and embarrassed that they called Vedanta, the devotees there in Sri Lanka, they called Vedanta Deshika back. So it's required that at least some people understand this, to deal, as Srila Prabhupada says, he talks about, if you read the Srimad Bhagavatam, at least you can defend yourself against the onslaught of atheists. But what often happens is that when devotees are very simple, they can easily get misled also. And there are many cases. We find in Chaitanya Charitamrita that Balabhadra Bhattacharya, who was Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's assistant, and he was supposed to be, he was Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said that you're a Pandit, he'd studied Shastra. But when the local people said that Krishna has appeared again in Vrindavan, and at night he's dancing on Kaliya in the Yamuna, Balabhadra Bhattacharya became very enthusiastic to go and see that. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, what is this now? You're supposed to be a Pandit and you believe all this rubbish? So he was learned, but he hadn't considered the implications of Shastra. Sometimes you find people, they're learned, but they don't know how to apply it. So unless there are devotees who understand all these points in detail, then these simple devotees who just want to do service, they're going to be misled by cheaters and mayavadis and bogus gurus. And practically what's going on in India, mostly people are following Bhakti. And all these groups, like I'm talking about these bogus avatars and bogus gurus, they are some people like mundane scholars, they classify them in the Bhakti cults, because it's Guru Bhakti. People have Bhakti for Sai Baba and Asharam Bapa and all this, but that's not Bhakti according to the definition of Shastra. But the spirit of devotion is there, but it's perverted because it's centered on the wrong person, and there are so many wrong ideas that people have. Just like Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he was fighting against all these sahajiyas. There's so much bhakti in Bengal, but there are so many, it's all mixed up with so many bogus ideas. So someone should understand these points about the philosophy in detail, because that's required. Another point is that is also glorification of Krishna to do that, because this, what Krishna speaks, is non-different from him. And to attempt to go deeper and deeper in understanding Krishna, that's another form of glorification of Bhagavad-gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, and therefore all our acharyas have done that. And sometimes some class of sahajiyas, they criticize the acharyas as being dry gyanis. So yeah, it's not that everyone's going to be a great philosopher, but that is also required, and that's why Prabhupada had classes every day, and maybe not everyone's fit for hearing classes. Some people should be or they may not be fit for hearing classes at a philosophical level, but Prabhupada spoke every single day on the philosophy of Krishna consciousness. And I've several times described how the first time I had direct darshan of Prabhupada, he came to London for less than one day, and the only speaking he did, he gave one class. He didn't say to the devotees, "I'm very happy to see you," or any such thing. He just came down, gave a class, a very philosophical class, and left. That was my first darshan of Prabhupada. So he gave these classes day after day because he wanted to train first and foremost a class of brahmanas, people who understand the truth and how to apply it in their lives. So maybe one reason in ISKCON that nowadays a lot of our classes, there's lots of jokes and stories and all this kind of things, is because, they're trying to bring in people other than the philosophically minded class. Or people who, that's there. I mean, in the Puranas are stories, and that's Mahabharat, Sri Shudra Drija Bandhu Nam, Traina Veda Gochara. That Mahabharata is meant for people who are not fit for the high teachings of the Vedas. But so maybe there should be a division of class, of instruction also. That's also there. Brahmanas are not instructed in the same way as non-Brahmanas. But even though as Srila Prabhupada said, even though the philosophy course, you'll hardly expect 2 or 3 people to enroll for that, but still it should be maintained. Massive people, they're not going to be philosophers. But to some extent they should be also. They should understand the basics. As far as possible. Yeah, it's true. All these points discussing in detail, maybe it's not for everyone. For most people, chant Hare Krishna, take prasad and be happy. But at least try to understand Bhagavad-gita at some level. Yeah.
Yes.
You understood? Okay.
Yes.
All right.
I have one more question, please.
Yeah.
After second initiation, Maharaj, is sannyas lena jaruri hai? Yes.
After second initiation, is it necessary to take sannyas? Did you take second initiation? No. Well, I think if you're asking that question, you shouldn't take second initiation. Second initiation, pancharatrik, means that you're allowed to worship deities. But Prabhupada often called that Brahminical initiation. So to be a Brahmin means one should understand philosophy. It's not necessary to formally take sannyas. At one level it's not necessary, on another level Prabhupada said everyone should take sannyas. So again, it's an apparent contradiction. I personally not much in favor of giving everyone Brahminical initiation. Anyway, that's another whole subject. Is it necessary to take sannyas? Formally, no, it's not. It's not required. And not advisable, probably also. Yeah, anything else? There was a question.
Mataji, please.
I just wanted to ask about, just like we know that devotees, when they are advancing in spiritual life, they feel a reciprocation from the Lord.
Yeah, devotees who I just repeat what you're saying because I should be right this way. Devotees who are advancing in spiritual life, they feel reciprocation from the Lord.
And so it helps them advance more, and thus
The soul?
And thus it helps them
And
advance.
and the reciprocation from the Lord helps them to advance more. They feel enthused to
and
go
they
on.
go on. But what about in the case of Mayavadis?
What in the case of Mayavadis?
What is making them go on?
What makes them go on? Well, it may be different in different cases. People have different motivations. We're talking about Hitler. Maybe his motivation was the sense he's doing good for the German people. That may have been his motivation. For the Mayavadis, I mean, they get a huge boost to their egos. Egoism keeps them running on. To think that I am God, and then people come and they respect them, and it's a big thing. Everyone has some motivation. So they get reciprocation from the material energy in thinking that they are God. Makes them feel good in a perverted way. Yeah, anything else? All right. Hare Krishna. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Yeah, real realization means to serve Krishna.
Krsna.